Alright, let me check the audio. Testing. Alright. Let me grab some water. Alright, the chat and everything else is going to be behind me, but I'll just turn around and check every now and again. What we're about to do is pretty much pick up where we left off yesterday. We have a bunch of boards, the styles that are about 84 inches. They're milled up to just under 6 inches so they can actually fit on my jointer. We're going to joint all the faces. I've already done 10 of them. We have 10 more to do, and then we can joint all the edges. And then I need to go back and rip all the rails to under 6 inches and then run them through the jointer. So I'll be set up to actually go through the planer. How much of that will I get done today? I don't know. And I just freshly paste waxed the jointer to try to make this process nice and smooth. 84 inches is about the longest I can do without any type of in-feed or out-feed support. My DeWalt thickness planer is sitting up just a little too high to use for in-feed. I do probably plan to get some roller stands. Probably will. Wouldn't hurt to have. And then I am going to be dropping the overall height of my DeWalt planer pretty soon. So soon enough, I'll have in-feed and I'll probably be able to tackle boards a full 8 foot or longer. But I think 5 to 6 foot is probably about the max you can do on this jointer comfortably. 7 foot is able to be done. It's just a little rough, especially dealing with 8/4 material. Let's get all that buffed off before we get started. Alright, ready to get jointing. It's going to be a little loud. I'm going to be running my dust collector and the jointer at the same time. But I'm probably going to do that until I get all these boards milled up or until my arms get tired. And then we'll probably switch to the table saw. After a couple passes, I typically would bring the board over here to my stack. And then the goal of the jointer is to get one face perfectly flat. So to check that it's nice and flat, I'll come back with my 6 foot level. And then check for gaps of light underneath. This one still can have more taken off on the ends. So I'm going to do probably like another 2, maybe 3 passes. This side should be flat after that. But I have to rinse and repeat that for these 10 boards on this side. And then we can go into the edge jointing. Be the last laborious part of this project, just because running again, full 7 foot boards, 8/4 through the jointer is a little bit without the proper in feed and out feed. So we're gonna do that until I get tired. Then probably switch over to the table saw. doing? Thanks for joining in. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. Full blade, yes. This is a 6-inch jointer, and my stiles and rails are gonna be like 4 3/4. So I ripped some of my materials about like 8 inches, 9 inches. So I ripped them all down to just under 6. They're like 5 3/4, 5 7/8. And now I'm just pretty much running everything through the jointer to get a flat face. Then want to get a flat and square edge. Then we're going to set up the planer, and we still do have a bunch of other material up front for all the rails. This stack is all the stiles. Everything on the back side has already been jointed. We're jointing this whole stack here. And then we have all the rails kind of just spread out around the shop. Bottom rails are going to be like 9 1/4, so that's what those are. And then that whole stack up front are all the mid rails. But those again are like 8 9 inches. So I'm going to rip those down to probably 5 3/4. Then eventually those will be coming back here to the jointer, then the planer, and those will be a lot better. Those are like 40 inches, 30. I mean, no, those are 52. So a lot easier to run through the jointer, a lot less on my wrist and everything else. I will say the first 10 boards I did this morning definitely have me tired. But what we're aiming for is for when our level sits up there, for the gap underneath to disappear. And once the board is straight, once I send it back through the planer, the other side will be made parallel. And we have square and flat material. But yes, I don't have an 8-inch joiner, so we are currently doing full widths on this jointer, and I'm actually fairly surprised. This is again 8/4 ash going through a 6-inch rigid jointer, and it's doing full width cuts without too much of an issue. These blades aren't the sharpest, but they're not dull either, so I'm impressed. It's doing it. Only issue is me pushing 8/4 boards and having to balance that last little bit without in feed or out feed. So when I get started, I have to be further back here and support up here as I go into the cut. A little uncomfortable. It actually builds up in your forearms, but it has to get done. And we have 8 more to do. And then I can go up front and start ripping stuff on the table saw. And honestly, if my arms get tired, if I can at least finish these first 5, we might hop up front to the table saw, then come back here, kind of do bounce back and forth to give myself a little bit of a break. But let's get back to it. This one cups down. So that's when we get ran face down. I know I'm pretty much flat. All of that is going to pass all the way across the board, but it very well still can have a few rough spots. So let's say there's a few spots that were lower than where I put my pencil mark. And actually, I can see a pencil mark still right there. So one more pass to do this one. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. God, that one actually did it. Woo. Okay. Hopefully that one's flat after that pass. Because that was a lot. Beautiful. Whew. Let's see. Hey, how you doing? What type of project am I working on? We're currently building 10 interior doors. They're all going to be made of ash. We have all of the styles over here. All but this board and then this stack has a jointed face. All of those have been jointed. We have to joint these last few, and then we can joint the edges. And then we have all of the rails spread around the shop. Rails, bottom rails. These are going to be 9 1/4. So we have wider boards for that. And then we have a whole stack of rails up front. But all of those up front are about 8 inches. So I need to rip those to a little bit smaller so they can fit through my jointer. So I wanted to get all these jointed and finished. Well, jointed face, jointed edge. And then I can kind of rip all those and then bring those and kind of stack them on top of this stack. Then I can set up the planer and kind of just work through the whole stack. Then bring them back to the front of the shop, kind of, sort of, was my game plan. But I'm not going to lie, running these 8 1/4 boards to the jointer definitely is a good bit of work. I think I'm going to try to finish this last one right here, which will leave me with 5 total. And then I'm probably going to run up front, take a break, and start ripping stuff because that'll be a lot easier on me. So probably the game plan. Joint one more, hop up front, and then come back here and, struggle through the last 5. But yeah, hopefully the game plan is by the end of tonight, everything can be planed up. And then tomorrow I can go into cutting and ripping to the final dimensions. And then hopefully by Thursday I can go into routing everything, test fits, and then I can go ahead and make up all the panels and everything else and move on with the build. Probably get everything glued up hopefully by this weekend if I'm lucky. They ain't got enough clamps to glue up probably Uh, 4 doors. No, I can only do 3 doors at a time because they're 5 panels. Yeah, this one is done. Should have enough clamps to do 3 doors at a time. If I can clamp them up, let them sit for 2 hours, hypothetically, I can do all the glue ups in one day. But that'll take me being diligent and here in the shop the whole day. Which side on this one is flatter before I run it through the joints here? Actually, amazingly enough, this fifth one is already flat, so I don't have to do anything to it. We're going to run up front and start using the table saw. Oh no, some of this is still rough, so I do need to joint it to at least get it down to here, so I do need to run it. Let you know how tired I am. I'm trying to skip steps. The breaker I just tripped, and of course, it's behind my miter saw. It's all of my stuff right here, and all this wood stacked on top of it. You gotta take a short reprieve from those fun activities and start ripping some of these down on the table saw to give me smaller boards to run through the joiner because that's easier on my wrist. Another thing I'm going to need to do is move that to like right here. Hey, how you doing? these can go back there. Close back up. in there. I'm using a battery power saw to rip down 8/4 ash, and the battery was dead. So yeah, it was definitely pushing underpowered, and this stuff is rough sawn, so these aren't even perfectly straight. So running these through the table saw is always a little questionable. But also, I'm probably about to switch back to my main table saw. She had died on me yesterday, but I got her back running, so we'll probably move all the wood currently on the bench and bring this stack behind me back there to rip everything else on the main table saw. Probably what I'm thinking. I think I'm going to take me a quick cigarette break, though. Probably take a cigarette break and then start moving stuff. And also, the Flex has stacked lithium batteries and standard pouch cells. Standard batteries. The stacked lithium definitely runs the saw a lot better than the older batteries. Yeah. This one runs a lot better than these batteries do. This battery did like the first, 12, 13 rips. This one was able to get through like 5. So definitely a difference in the battery and the output. But yeah, I think I'm going to go back to the main saw and finish up these rips, or I might head back to the jointer. I think I've gotten a little bit of a rest. But I think I'm due for a cigarette break before we continue. We have 5 more boards back here that we need to joint. And then we can go into edge jointing, and then the rest of these boards, again, are a lot smaller. So running these on the jointer will be a lot easier than running, 7 and 8 foot long boards. So I'm almost at the part where it gets a lot easier. I just have 5 more to kind of torture my way through. And I was kind of doing the table saw to give myself a break in between the actual jointing process. But I've ripped up a good portion of the wood that needs to get jointed. I still have 1, 2, 3, 6, 8 more boards to rip down. So I'll probably clear off the table saw once all this back here is done. Then probably switch back to ripping. That's what I'm thinking anyway. Let me grab me a cigarette. I also do appreciate everybody who's joined in so far. We've stayed above, I think, 20 people in here for most of the stream so far. I'll probably go for maybe another hour before I call it a day. My goal, hopefully, is to at the very least, is to get all these jointed back here and maybe get the rest of those ripped. If I can get into any type of planing, that would be an ideal scenario, but probably not before I finish up today. Probably when I come back tonight, I might end up picking up the stream and going a little bit later and maybe get to setting up the planer. Whew. I might open up the back door to cool it off in here just a little bit. Definitely can't wait till I get past all the milling process and I can get to these boards being, not as thick, not as long or as wide, so significantly lighter. So the rest of this process will get a lot easier once I get through the planing process. And I finally get on to the fun part. I just recently did the insert for my table here with the router table. This is a Jesselyn router lift. I still have the route on the T-track for the fence and the miter track up front, but I'd much rather be doing the rest of the work up here than all this rough milling and lifting heavy lumber. All right. About to bring you guys to the back. And we're going to pick up the jointing process. We have 5 more to do. Hey, how you doing, boss man? And yes, it's not as fun. I'm almost done. I have like 4 more boards to do, and then I can go into edge jointing. There's a little bit of a hassle jointing these 8-foot long boards on this smaller bed. And the fact that they're 8/4 doesn't make it any easier. This one still needs a few more passes. All the way down. There's a belly probably right about here. We're getting it, just slow going. Pass all the way through. So it should, in theory, be flat. There we go. Now it's 3 more to do. Yes, fairly large one. And I was thinking about running it through the planer, but I didn't want to set up the planer until I actually got everything in the shop ready for planing. You probably can't see it on cam, but we have rails, a whole bunch of other rails back there that need to be ripped down so they can even fit through the jointer. So I'm trying to get all that stuff pretty much ready for the jointer before I even bring out the planer. And the first step to that is getting the rest of these styles done. and then I can stack all the rail material on top of the stiles, run all those through the jointer. Then I'll be switching over to the planer. It's just been a lot of fun planing and jointing, 8-quarter pieces of ash. First time working with ash. This is not light. This is not poplar. Hey, how you doing? And blade sharp, but yes, the board has a decent cup in it. So we're having loads of fun working our way through the cup. And I'm only taking off a 16th. I probably could be more aggressive and go to an 1/8. Might go up just a little bit. Almost a shave on the whole board. I'm not sure if the camera, yeah, you guys miss it. Yeah, about this much that isn't getting hit yet. Hopefully in the next 2 passes or so, 2 or 3. Getting there. think I broke a decent enough sweats. And yeah, very uneven board. The next step is now all the edge jointing, which should be a lot easier. One on my jointer because not as much of the blade will be exposed or worked. And I can put these up. And actually let me close the garage door so I can cut the light on back there. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining in. Phew. I will say those boards are extremely heavy. Definitely need to get an in-feed and out-feed roller. I typically use my DeWalt planer as in-feed for most of my tools, but my table saw and everything else recently got shorter when I built the cart and everything else for it, all this down here. So when I built that, the table saw is now shorter, and that's actually the planer cart is too high for that. The planer cart is too high for the jointer. So my next big project will probably be shortening up my planer cart so it can operate as in-feed for all of my other tools, especially the jointer. If I want to be able to do more doors like this, it'd be a lot easier. I do have a 8-foot long planer sled, but that just is extremely unwieldy, and now I like to not have to pull out a large planer sled to flatten up all these boards. Whew. I want a bigger jointer now. I would love a large cast iron 8-inch, 10-inch joiner. Definitely give me a lot more freedom on what I build. And let me check my phone battery too while I'm at it. Let's see what time it is. 7:12. I'll probably go for like another 20-30 minutes. See how easy the edge jointing is, and if it isn't too bad, maybe try to edge joint all of those, but probably not. I'll probably edge joint again for like another 20-30 minutes. I still have a couple more boards that need to get ripped, and then all of my rails stashed around the shop, they all need to get face jointed and edge jointed. But again, it'll be a lot easier than what I just went through because the boards are, 25-30 inches. Running this through the jointer isn't gonna, overwork me like running an 8-foot long board. So I'm actually looking forward to doing all these. Oh, I do need to put that battery back on the charger. There it is. Alright. Feeling motivated. This should be a lot easier and a lot quicker. Most of these boards, when they came from the mill, they were fairly straight off rip. So unlike these boards that had the large cups in them that took, 7 or 8 passes, hopefully I should be able to get straight edges on all these within 2 or 3 passes. damn, did I lose the stream? Okay, we're back. But everybody that was in here done left. I guess I lost signal for a little bit. I don't know for how long. But we have 3 boards with jointed edges. 3 styles that are almost ready for the table saw and planer. I think that might be where, oh, well, people are joining back in. I was just about to call it. Make sure it's not going to drop again now. I don't know how long we're out. So I could go ahead and, theoretically, the jointing of the edges are going a lot faster than the faces. I probably could actually joint up the rest of these before my battery dies. And that'll put me in a pretty good place. I'm about to run out in a little bit when I come back. The only thing I'll have left to do is still rip all of those over there, which is about 8 or 9 boards, and then everything will be narrow enough for the jointer. So I'll probably hit another live stream later tonight, and that would cover me ripping the last few boards and jointing the last few rails. And we might have time to get to the table saw tonight, which will set me up pretty good for tomorrow to actually cut everything to proper lengths and go to the router table. If we can get that far tonight / tomorrow, I think I'll be pretty happy. I do have 2 estimates for some other jobs I do got to do. Probably won't. Oh, we're back to where we were before we lost before the stream dropped. So I guess we'll keep going. We're back to 23 people in here. I greatly appreciate, again, everybody who's been in here or came in and out throughout the stream. Again, you guys are helping me get monetized. If you guys don't know, I've probably been on YouTube for probably about 2.5 years, give or take. And I'm doing a lot more live streams just so I can get my watch time hours up. I think I need about 4,000. We're at about 1,900. And the live streams have definitely been helping for watch time hours. So we're trying to do more of these, especially on projects like this where I've already filmed everything I needed to. I don't need to film, again, the hours of jointing and planing. But it gives me a chance to, one, do live streams and hang out with you guys. It looks like everybody else thinks I was about to call it a day, too. Oh, they're back in. I'm actually tired. I was almost looking for an excuse to call it. But if people are still watching, we'll keep going. So, yeah, let me get back to jointing. Whew. We have 3 down, and we have 17 more styles to go. And actually, what I do need to do is make sure the rough edges are pretty obvious that these are the ones that need to get ripped. But you definitely want to mark what has been jointed and what hasn't been jointed. So as you go throughout this process, you don't go to your planer and put your jointed side face up. Or, when you go to your table saw, you rip the wrong edge. So keep track of all that as you go throughout this process. Definitely good to know what needs to go through and what doesn't. We're already taking a ton of passes as it is. Kind of sucks to do like an extra 2 or 3 passes on the complete wrong side. Or to end up ripping something and then just losing the overall width that you're aiming for. Let me joint these 2. Thanks for joining in. I will say you're a tad bit late though. I was probably about to end the stream. Well, am about to end the stream. And what we have gotten accomplished today is all of these boards are face jointed, all 20 of them. We have these 7 face and edge jointed. I still need to edge joint all of these. And these again are all the styles for the door, the tall vertical pieces. They still need to be ripped down to about 4 3/4. These are about 5 inches, give or take. And then we have the plethora of rails all laid out around the shop. We have the bottom rails, which are wider. These ones are going to be 9 1/4, maybe 10 inches. So we still need to actually plane and joint all of these. And then we have these that still need to be ripped down to be small enough to go through our jointer. But again, that'll probably be what I live stream later tonight. But I definitely appreciate everybody who's joined in and watched the stream so far. Everybody who's commented and chatted down at the bottom. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And if you guys want to see more of this build, catch me a little bit later tonight, probably around like 9, 10-ish. We'll probably pick this back up. But yeah, if you guys have enjoyed, definitely let me know down below. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you guys aren't already subscribed to the channel. And I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Peace.